Ukrainian called Roshan, who is saying about rule of law, democracy, freedom of media, and this stuff. And then there is some other voices coming from Budapest saying, no, you don't need this. You need railways, highways, you need better energy system, of course. No, that's stadiums, so, but it's most important is energy, railways, highways, and so on. Why? Guess where is the highest level of corruption? Yeah, but it's easier in highways. Now it's easier, especially if Chinese are building. Yeah. So this is the reality. So now it's on us how to intervene in a legal way. And there are many proposals coming from the European Parliament, which Commission and the Council should take into consideration. So now we have all the candidate countries. I think we can set to them a clear conditions, not in this. You need to accept, and this will be also, I hope, it will never be an issue for Ukraine. I really hope for you. But you know what is going on in the Western Balkans? The parliament set a new law on judiciary. They have this referendum. I'm saying about the Western Balkans. They had this referendum on judicial reform. Then they had the judicial reform and they said, our judges are now much more independent. And then you have this electoral privreda of one country. And then was a corruption scandal. And 3 prosecutors started to investigate it. And what happens? After the commission said, yeah, you have now a better situation. Even in this report, you're claiming the same. And now what happened? Guess what? Politicians simply removed those 3 troublemaking prosecutors. So, what's the point? What's the message to the population of this specific country? What's the message? Tell me what's the message we are sending to them. This is what we are doing wrong. The message would be, what? The message would be to say to them, look, now we will ask you to allow European Prosecutor's Office to start investigating how the European money is spent in your countries. Why? For 2 reasons. Because we need to defend our European funds, because interests, because European Union still is based on the principle you mentioned in 1974 on common market. And this is one reason, but the second one is to prove to those citizens, not to the leaders, to the citizens, that there can be independent prosecutor who can prosecute someone who is in close family, business, whatever you want to name it, relation with the local sheriff. And when this will happen, then the accession will start, and then the Western Balkan countries will start to move rapidly, so rapidly towards to the Europe that you cannot even imagine at the moment.
And why don't we do that?
Good question. We don't do it because it's easier to say you have 14 points, you need to deliver. If you want to deliver this, look Bosnia. Bosnia has 2 entities. We have Dodik, who is now doing Little Russia in there. And someone is supporting him. You know who's supporting him. And what is even worse, we have a lot of politicians in Europe, even in our parliament, who are in secret supporting him. So it's not only Orban. Orban is just the face. Yeah. There is a network. We saw it in Slovenia how it goes when it starts. And it goes very fast. Very, very fast. Unbelievably fast. I was sure, because I was dealing, in my previous life, I was dealing with security research. I was shocked how quickly an average democratic police force can turn something else. This can be done so easily that I'm astonished, and I must say that I do understand what happened in the 30s in neighboring country. Why it was so quick. It's very easy to do it. Unbelievably, you cannot believe how quickly it can be done. This is really, it's astonishing. It's frightening, actually. What I was saying for the West, so look, there are 2 entities. Then in one entity you have cantons, and these cantons are now becoming a state within the state. So you have a canton Sarajevo, who is now going in a way, in certain direction I'm worried about. Then you have more liberal, more progressive cantons. So, in this kind of structure, you need to tell them, all the time, what they need to do and how to do it and help them do it. Because on their own, they will never do it. Because they don't have the skills, they don't have the knowledge, and what is the most important, this is distinction with Ukraine, they don't have this, let's say in the Brussels language, political will to do it. Because they don't want to do it, you know? Even if they say it, and what I would be very happy, if for Commission to start, you know what? To tell them when they come to Brussels, you tell them, yeah, but you know, they say, yeah, we will do all the reforms, but you need to tell them, look, that needs to be said publicly. Yeah, but in this and this event, you said something else. You said that you will never enter the European Union, that you will not allow Brussels bureaucrats to dictate how this country will develop. You need to say it publicly. This needs to be done by the commissioner, of course, who will never do it. But it can be done by the president of the commission. You know, going to one country which I'm not supposed to mention and say, yeah, everything is fine. No, you need to say, not, everything is not fine.
Okay, so we need a liberal commissioner for enlargement after the next elections. A short question, Thomas Achleitner. There was a group of Bosnians, NGOs and young politicians in Vienna a few weeks ago. And many things, just one sentence, one of the guys said this. He said, yes, the huge majority of the Bosnians want to enter the European Union, but the politicians don't want because the system they're having right now, they're living quite well, so there is no chance because the politicians will not do it. Is that also your impression?
How constrained do you want me? Is it sort of, well, we are amongst friends. Right, okay.
But there is internet,
Yeah. No, I mean, I give you my personal view, and after 20 years of dealing with enlargement, I've come to one conclusion in the West, concerning the Western Balkans, and in that case, the ones who are interested in joining the EU are two groups, citizens and business. That's it. It's not the politicians. They are comfortable. They're comfortable. What's the problem? I mean, citizens, as was said, I mean, a lot of them are doing their individual Article 49, they are moving, which is a big problem in its own. What's the structural problem? The structural problem, this is what I meant before, is as much as we like business and citizens and NGOs and fund them, in order to get into the EU, you need a functioning political system that delivers the 150,000 pages of the acquis, to come back to that. And this is the bottleneck. Here are the politicians, the leader in the region. Now, I mean, I hear you. I don't think there is a miracle solution to that. I mean, what we are trying, in all modesty, with the growth plan, which is not only about the money, but we will only be paid upon delivery of reforms. It's a very different construction from IPA. It will be like the Ukraine Reform Facility, like the RRF, so they will only upon delivery of reforms. And the second thing is that we're trying to have more tangible steps, trying to get away from the everything or nothing in terms of enlargement. You know, that was the model until now. Until you join, only upon joining, then everything is available. So we are trying to see what can be advanced from it sounds technical, but roaming and payments and all of that is very tangible, and precisely to motivate citizens, businesses, to provide the pressure for the political system. I know Bosnia is a particularly complex case to deliver that problem. But I would also say, I mean, if you, I know you know them as well, but if you look at our reports, I mean, we are extremely critical, taken up. Politicians want to sell good news, not the criticism that is there in a lot of detail. But also, I mean, let's also recognize that the countries are moving, yeah? I mean, in some areas. I mean, not, let's speak about one we can mention. Albania, say, the judicial reform that Albania has gone through with the level of external interference for the vetting of judges that Albania has accepted, no EU member state would ever dream of accepting. And that has to be recognized as well. It's amazing. It is amazing. and it worked. Well, it is sort of starting to deliver. And I mean, and why? I mean, in Montenegro, you said it. Why has there been the collapse of the previous government? I think part of it is as well the kind of the rule of law conditionality that we've applied. They got cornered at some stage. So all that to say that not everything is bleak, but of course the challenges are there in the region.
Okay, thank you. I want to take a few. Very short.
That's why I'm saying you're writing the reports, which are diplomatic language, and it's okay. But politicians, because commissioners are politicians, can go to these countries and say frankly and openly, you know, in our report it said this and this. You didn't deliver, because I know that if once this will happen, you will see how positive will be this. You know why? Because even if the media are controlled, if the president of the commission and the president of the council, so this will not be political, because the council is coming from my political group, with our political group, okay? So he might also say the same, you know, just say, look, you didn't deliver on judicial reform. And then you can also say, you didn't do this and this, because then the campaigning in the elections for those politicians is difficult. And little steps can make a huge change. Why? Because when this will happen, the citizens and the businesses and all those who want to go into the European Union will start doing the pressure on these politicians.
Okay, I take a few questions from the public, but just a short question, and you're used to 1 minute speeches in the European Parliament, isn't that true? Okay, so I have a very simple question. I come back to Olga Stefanishina. She said that, of course, she likes the merit-based approach, and the Ukraine is doing everything, but Europe also has to understand that it has to reinforce to be a global force. You know, so we have to explain. We need to be a global force. So my simple question is, and please, everybody has 1 minute. Will the European politicians be able to explain that? Will Europeans understand until the elections in June that we in Europe have to be also a global force, because otherwise the others will play around with us? Please, 1 minute. Everybody, 1 minute.
1 minute. Yes. Of course. Sorry. 1 minute past.
Yes. No.
No. Communication is surely a weakness in the European Union. It's altogether very difficult to speak about the European Union in a very interesting way. I am mainly in the Internal Market Committee, and there is this proximity to the citizen, you know, all those one charger for all devices, etc. That's something that is interesting, but not many people know this or know how to speak about this, to show this union in an interesting way. And enlargement creates also a lot of fears. It's a very difficult issue because we know each other very little within the union, and now think about this far away, those far away European countries, but far away. And there is a lot to do. And what I think our priority really is, we need a European public space. We have no television, even if Euronews is trying something, or Arte. We have no figures that would represent, frankly speaking. There is no, I'm sorry, I don't want to diminish the role of anybody, but there is no figure that is really well known in Europe. It's actors, singers, or footballers, or someone, but not politicians. And we must work on this to have this public space. But I know 1 minute is over. But one more. I fully agree with you that if the Commission doesn't take a tough stance, then in those countries against which the politician must take a very clear position, then the citizens and businesses say, so what this Europe is good for? You know, this was, the change in Poland was possible, among others, because, or maybe, because the European Commission had a very clear stance. We do not pay until the milestones are fulfilled, yeah? And this must be done also in the Western Balkans, I think, really.
1 minute.
Yeah, what I would say is, I think most citizens agree that the EU should be a geopolitical actor. I think that is something that most agree with. When it's trying to explain enlargement, what I'm trying to tell people, or sometimes member states that are a bit further away, say from the Western Balkans or from Ukraine, the fact of the matter is, in the rest of the world, the EU will never be taken as a serious global geopolitical actor unless it is able to kind of manage the situation in the Western Balkans and in Ukraine, and enlargement is a key factor to that. You know, that's a fact of life. You know, we'll not be taken serious anywhere else. We can adopt how many Indo-Pacific, communications, and sorry for colleagues if they're there, as we like. We're not going to be taken seriously as a global political actor.
So, crucial point, we'll make it or it's over. Timon.
I would say that we need to meet expectations. I think that expectations of the citizens are very clear in the Conference of Europe, where they expect that EU is much more like a state. The second issue, we have public opinion polls released, I think, this morning. So the social issue is a very important issue. So we need to address this. For me, it's easier because I have a starting point in 1991. I can compare always Slovenia, Croatia, and I will now use the word Serbia, and then you can see what's the difference. So is Europe of any use? Of course it is. What we need to explain to them, I would not use these geopolitical terms and this stuff because I was dealing with geopolitics for a big part of my life. It's sexy, it sounds sexy, but people don't like it. You know, they say to me, you're speaking very smart, I know you know what you're talking about, but I completely not understand you. So you need to say, if you want to have a better, more social Europe, then you need to have it more geopolitical, because geopolitical success means better welfare of all European citizens. And this is something they might understand.
Okay, thank you. 1 minute.
Let's address elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is called Trump. So this elephant may become very relevant at the end of the next year. So basically, European Union has like a limited amount of time to make all the decisions, to figure out who are adults in the room and which decisions these adults need to take. And as we have spoken gently, is we lack strong leader who can come and like say, okay, I would be the one defining the strategy, I would be the one who will, if we find ourselves in one bed with Trump, we will figure out how to do this, etc., etc. This is what I do not see right now, and I understand everybody is preparing for the elections, figuring out their strategies, but this is why 2024 will be such a definitive year. And I'm just back from Africa, from Senegal, where it's always very interesting to hear what people think from African political leadership about EU, about West. And it was also they saying, well, so it was very interesting. They said, 5 years ago, most of the conferences that we attended in EU were on crisis of EU values, where to go next, what's going to happen. So can you tell us, did they already figure out like what the crisis, did the crisis already end? Do they already know where they're going? And I was just like, okay, hopefully yes, but look, this is a blunt truth. So we now have the timeline, we now have the goal, and again, it's either somebody else from some country like over the ocean who will be defining, or it will be or European Union, and Europe will know like what we are going to do, where we are going, and the answer to this like, question: where do you see yourself in 5 years? Well, for us, it's in Ukraine. It's very clear where we see ourselves in 5 years. So the question is it clear for everybody else?
Thank you.
Very short. With Trump, you know, for EU, it would be disaster for the world, but Trump for Europe, it's a catastrophe, but it also might be opportunity, because when there is crisis, I mean, there will be a lot of problems for us.
Not before the war is over.
So
Yeah.
maybe if there will be like a strong leader, and we don't see that.
Yeah, but you know, it might.
Okay, that's the future, we don't know. Question, 3 questions. 1 to 3. Please, short questions, and then we'll make a final one. Please. Please listen to the question because you have to answer them.
So my question would be regarding the recent statement by the President of the European Council. The recent statement of the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, who basically set a target date for the next wave of EU enlargement, of the year 2030. How realistic would you say is it, considering the traditional skeptical countries like maybe France and the Netherlands, but also this newly found opposition we find now in Hungary, but also Slovakia recently?
Okay, next question.
Try to be brief. It's actually towards Ruda and about the situation in Poland. I might be not too much into this, but everybody keeps complaining or worrying about that it takes so long for the new government to be sworn in. Yes, on the one hand, I understand. On the other hand, I always feel kind of hopeful, or I kind of try to see the silver lining in the longer it takes, looking at the European elections coming up next year, that the new government is sworn in, the freshness of a new government, the enthusiasm, the optimism remains towards the day of the elections, which is to me kind of a silver lining, hopeful thought that I try to have as an optimist, and I wanted to on the one hand, hear your stance on it, or whether that's very naive, but that is actually something that I'd like to see that way.
Okay, 4th row.
Hello, I'm Alina from Romania. I tell you this because I was very struck by what Clement said about the fight in the Balkans, about of the old power structures. And I think this is a real challenge everywhere, also in Ukraine and Moldova, and also in the European countries, EU member states coming from Soviet regimes. And you gave us the good example of Albania and the reform of the justice system with the vetting of the judges, so on, and I'm also very impressed. But what we see in Romania, and not only in Romania, is that these kind of reforms are not irreversible. So you can have a quite huge effort, political effort, and then you have backtracking after EU accession. And I think that now in these next European elections, we really are fighting a bit for liberal democracy all over Europe. So my question is, how do we deal with this? Which is the solution? Do you agree, for example, with the French-German proposal to switch the new mechanism of rule of law, conditioning of funds, and make it less specific? So not now the rule of law mechanism can take away funds from member states, but only if there is a connection with EU budget and if the management of EU budget respects the principles. But can we expand this to make it in such a way that every time there is a breach of rule of law, independence of justice, so on, EU funds are not being granted to one member state? What is the solution in the long run to defend the liberal democracies in Europe after enlargement?
Mulțumesc. Last question was in the back.
Hi, Garvin Walsh from Unhacked Democracy. Some years ago, David Cameron vetoed the vital European fiscal consolidation that was needed at the height of the financial crisis. And the EU responded by setting up a special purpose vehicle, the European Fiscal Compact, to allow those important measures to be financed. Isn't it worth considering preparing an equivalent Ukraine aid compact so that at least the 50 billion that Ukraine needs so urgently will not be held hostage by Viktor Orban?
Okay, very last question.
Okay.
Good evening, thank you. I'm a student of European Studies, and currently we discuss really precisely the European integration process. And when you look in the past, it always took a while, and European integration 20, 30, 40 years ago was much easier, or a much more narrow process than it is today, and today it's very, very broad. Isn't it also a way to think about we should work more on partly integration of countries to give them a perspective to be more quicker with the integration of those countries.
Thank you. So let's start with Thomas Sackleitner, 2030.
Charles Michel, he's not my boss, but, so I can speak, but he's a liberal, and as a liberal he was prudent because he said that the EU should be ready to welcome new members by then. So I think it changes a bit the perspective. Now, my president von der Leyen, so she is my boss. She reacted as saying, "Own merit states don't make sense. It shouldn't be said." I mean, but both are true somehow. I mean, it's good to have a certain time horizon. Countries need a time horizon to plan. Whatever date you put, no one will like it. Some will say it's too far away. Others, it's too close. It's complicated. But I think it has steered the discussion on enlargement at the level of the European Council as well. So and said in that sense it is positive because I think what this whole Granada declaration, etc. I think is helpful because the EU also needs to get ready to prepare. And in general, this is sort of this absorption capacity is perceived in a negative sense, or it's used by those who are not in a hurry on enlargement. But I think this time is a bit different, and I think it's actually a good sign that the EU and its leadership are discussing these issues. I mean, there have been a lot of some of the questions have been of member states dealing with the non-members. I would still, just on balance, I mean, argue, as a liberal, personally speaking, I think enlargement still has been the biggest liberal success, over the last decades. I mean, on balance, there have been, you mentioned some of the countries in terms of liberal democracy. I think I would not like to imagine any of the new member states without the EU, not so new anymore, including the one you mentioned, without EU membership. So I think there is still the framework for liberal democracy within the EU is stronger. The anchor of the enlargement process for strengthening liberal democracy is stronger, and you mentioned some of the examples how it helps to reform. That liberal democracy is not irreversible. I personally am always against this. We have some member states who constantly keep on asking reforms have to be irreversible progress. As much as would like the concept, nothing's irreversible in liberal democracy is a fight each day so that it doesn't regress. So and we can not. The legal institutional framework is important, but it has to be. It has to be citizens ultimately that bring it forward.
Thank you, Rosa.
I will maybe start. There were many very interesting questions. If those, as you said, skeptical countries are ready to enlarge, we shall see. But I think the more information there is, the more especially the electorate will be ready for the enlargement. But I remember when we were joining the European Union, those 10 countries, the further west the opinion polls asked questions, the more skeptical they were towards the enlargement. And strangely enough, or this ex-Eastern German Länder, they were completely enthusiastic. And that's because they knew each other. So this must happen now too, so that the fear is gone. Then you are very optimistic those weeks that the Polish government is losing. This new Polish government is losing because the old government or the 2 weeks government is still there. Frankly speaking, the only good side of it, I think, is that people see more clearly what kind of I don't know how to call them, thieves the previous government was, really. How horribly destructive they are, etc. And this is very clear, how they even are not able to respect, we had a respect what people want. They voted on the 15th of October, vast majority to the opposition parties, and 75% of participation we never had since '89. So the will of the people is very clear, and what this Kaczynski people demonstrate today is how they ignore the will of Poles, and maybe this is good that we really.
That's my point being that this could be now like looking at the European elections and Poland being not a small country, not contributing little to the whole constitution of the European Parliament, and us fearing the ID or the ECR being very big, that this could actually contribute to
maybe, maybe because when you look at the polls today, if we had the elections today, this ex-opposition would have even a better score. It grows. The popularity of those people who are now majority in the parliament but not yet in government, the popularity grows. Also thanks to the president of the parliament, who is a liberal from our party, and he is extremely popular after a week of work. But altogether, I think, to me, it's demoralizing that politicians can behave in a way as those Kaczynski people behave, and it's a horribly demoralizing example, frankly speaking. And the last thing I wanted maybe to say, I don't know if earlier the enlargements were easier and the process is more difficult today, because I remember it as a very difficult process when we were joining. But I remember also, and I think this is important to remember today, our first negotiator, Jan Kułakowski, I don't know if anybody remembers him, this was an exceptional person who grew up in Belgium, and he knew the Western mind very well and the attitude towards enlargement and Poland. When he was very much criticized in Poland that he is too, he doesn't demand enough in the negotiations, he should be tougher, etc. And he was repeating all the time, the door is open a little and for a short time we must get in and then we will manage. And he was, imagine we wouldn't have had this enlargement 20 years ago. This would be over today. And I think really we must remember this, that when there are occasions and the door opens, we must profit and then we will manage. Of course there will be ups and downs, because I saw very clearly how you can destroy liberal democracy within 8 years. You can destroy it, it's a danger for all of us. And I hope that we will all profit from this horrible example that we have in Poland. But we must really also profit or catch the occasions when the door is a little bit open. And I think I will finish here.
Okay, thank you.
Special purpose vehicle for Ukraine, yes. You would need more of them for different reasons, but I will not go into details about this. On 2030, yes, I hope so. On conditionality to the access to European funds, yes, but what is the most important, this is the, I would say the point of my last statement, is we the liberals are the natural enemies of the far right. So we need to fight. Sometimes it's difficult, sometimes we don't want to fight. I was forced to fight, and it's a good fight. I enjoyed it, actually. When you start it. At the beginning it's a little bit difficult, but then you enjoy it. What we need to do is, we need to start this fight for hearts and minds of middle class and working class. We need to address social worries of our citizens. We don't do it now. We need to portray to them very clearly that enlargement doesn't mean just risks. It means a huge opportunity. If Jean-Claude Juncker starts to speak about agriculture in Europe and about Ukraine, of course it's a disaster, if you look at it this way. But if you look what all the opportunities which were brought to European Union by the enlargement process, I mean, there is not, I think, a single person who can say and deny it. We need to fight far right with facts. Sometimes it's difficult, and we need to explain to the citizens that facts are important, you know. And the major issue, I would say, for us, the liberals, where we can near very easily is migration. The lesson I see in the Netherlands is not to take their game. You need to fight the game on your own terms. This is the most important. So if migration is the major issue, you need to send them very clear message. For me, it's easier because we have a neighbor in Italy, Giorgia Meloni, it's excellent, you know. With this agreement with Albania, for us, the campaigning will be easier. But for the Europe, it's a disaster. We need to clearly say that we need a common approach on the migration, which needs to base on this, what we value, on our values. So if we need to explain to the people, and people to understand, you know, breaching our laws in attitude towards those people who are coming in the European Union means that at a certain point, our rights will be breached. And we need to explain to the citizens, you know, I was asked once, why I'm fighting for the LGBTQ plus people rights? Because there was this saying from Germany, I will try to say it, but I don't know if it will be exact. So when they came for my neighbor socialists, I was quiet. When they came for me, there was no one to defend me. Yeah.
No, I was not a communist. So
yes, and so yeah. You know the point. People do understand this. Because you know, if you look at the far right agenda, of course migrants are the first one because they're the easiest to target. But behind these glorious words about traditional past, you know, in Slovenia I can simply say, our traditional past before the Second World War was 70% and more of the people were living in almost extreme poverty. That's the glorious past. Do you want to go there? Probably not. People do understand this. And if they talk about, if we talk about the gender equality, it's very simple. The majority of far right sees all the women were behind working in the kitchen. That's it. Explain to them, because it's abortion, then it's working conditions for ladies, for women, and so on and so forth. We just need to set the score clear to them. This is what we are fighting about.
So I'm the person who is standing between you and food.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will be quick. Sitting between. So I promised that I will arm you with the good response to the populists that will be telling within the upcoming year that the money that is being spent on Ukraine should be spent somewhere else. And you should agree with them. Because there is money that is in the European Union that should be spent for Ukraine. It's Russian money. Recently we had Josep Borrell in Kiev, and he said that total amount of military support that European Union gave to Ukraine is 25 billion euros. Well, guess what? 20 times that is amount of money that is being frozen and stored in the European countries. It's 500 billion. It's a huge and enormous amount of money. It will actually can be used for all the purposes, inside your countries, outside the countries. And a year ago, when we started working on this matter of confiscating those money, all the people said that I'm crazy, that everyone who is working on that crazy, and that it cannot happen. And guess what? And I'm so I'm bursting with pride, saying that not only there are already countries that have passed the legislation, it's Canada, just yet, but there is our favorite and proudly liberal Belgian minister, Alexander De Croo, who issued a decree to use the interest that is being right now on the Russian money that is being stored in Belgium. Does anybody have any idea, just off the top of your head, how much this interest is? 1.7 billion. It is, and it is of 300 billion dollars that are being stored in Belgium right now. So this is what he. So the interest rate is high, and this is what he's ordered to use for the sake of Ukraine inside the country, and then to send to the European Fund for Ukraine. And this is something that we will be fighting to have done. And this is the best solution to the question of not using the money that and not raising the taxes and not asking people who actually support us to pay more for Ukraine. And I truly believe that this is a solution. And with that, I guess we are concluding, and Helen will probably say some of the words, but I want to, on behalf of Ukrainian people, to thank all of you for your support, for keeping us in your minds, for pushing for the enlargement, for the liberal values and win of the freedom and democracy.
Okay, thank you, Kira, and tell all your Ukrainian friends, all the people you meet now on your way back, that we think about them, that we will not forget them. We will not forget them. We know what they have to meet every day. You know, all the when Olga Stefanishina was in Vienna, she said 2 of the days of this week her children couldn't go to school. You know, all this that's your everyday life, and that's incredible. So thank you very much. By the way, to fight the far right parties is for us Austrians a very difficult task. You know, they have one scandal after the other, but then they are again in the polls really very strong. So there's also for us a lot to do. And here it's written, for freedom. Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom. There is a buffet. Since I didn't pay for it, I cannot say, please go to the buffet. So Jules, it's your job. Please, thank you very much for having us here. And you have the last words. Thank you very much.